Hello everyone, thank you for joining us on this edition of The Inside. A very warm welcome to you all to this episode of the State of the Nation, and we're bringing to you different perspectives, ideas, opinions, and what people think about the current situation of the Republic of Cameroon and how to move the compass from misery, poverty, hardship, socio-economic, political, security challenges affecting the nation from north to south, east to west, to a peaceful and prosperous Cameroon. And we're bringing to you another guest in this third episode of the State of the Nation. Meet him in some few seconds. Thank you very much. Our guest today is Ben Aki. He's a civil society leader, founder and coordinator of English Cameroon for United Cameroon. English Cameroon for United Cameroon, a civil society organization, and he's joining us from the United States of America. You're welcome on board.
Thank you very much, Mr. Babila, and thank you for having me.
Right, we are looking at the current situation of Cameroon. What's your opinion about the current situation of the country with regards to the multiple socio-economic, political, and security challenges affecting the nation?
Well, the situation in Cameroon is very challenging at the moment. We still have the conflict in former southern Cameroons, which the government pretends that the problem has been resolved, but it continues to be a very serious conflict that needs to be resolved, and we believe that it should be resolved by return to federalism. And then you still have situations of insecurity in the northern parts of the country, but above all, you see a situation where the country appears as if it is not being governed. The president is not very active in his role as president. Most of what he's supposed to do, he does by delegation. And within his government, we can see that there are different factions of his collaborators who are fighting to position themselves with respect to what comes after there. And as you may know, I have written about this situation in my book, Cameroon After Paul Biya. So it is a challenging situation that we are facing, but it is not without hope. It is not without options that we can embrace and try to navigate towards a more politically stable and prosperous situation for our country.
You're talking about hope in a situation that looks pretty much like a hopeless one to many Cameroonians who are not thinking about anything else but to escape, to move out of the country, to go for greener pastures in different parts of the world. When you're talking about having hope in the current situation, how can someone who has lost hope in this situation, who thinks there is nothing good that's going to come out of this country in the next decades, especially if the current regime is still in power, what will you tell such a person?
As human beings, hope should be the last thing that we give up. And even if we have to give up hope, we have to give up hope fighting. We cannot resign ourselves to the situation that we are facing and say that it is totally hopeless and we are damned in this situation. Cameroon is our country. Cameroon is a beautiful country. Cameroon has a lot of potential. You will not understand that until you actually leave the country. But now if you leave the country and you compare even the things that attract people to leave Cameroon, you begin to see that there is a lot of potential and there is a lot of opportunity within the country. We just need to work harder to make sure that that hope becomes a reality. And I say there is hope because I believe strongly that if we stick to the principles of constitutional democracy, we can navigate our country from the very abysmal situation which the current president has placed the country in. We can navigate towards a better situation, and that's what gives me hope. What gives me hope is the idea that we have a constitution, we have the possibility to make decisions for ourselves, and if we are able to make these decisions for ourselves, we can take our destiny into our hands. That is really what gives me hope. What gives me hope is the idea that the people of Cameroon, after all the disagreements, after all the accusations about tribalism and nepotism, when it happens that we are coming together to make a decision through the principles of constitutional democracy, through the competitive process of elections, I believe very strongly that every Cameroonian should be radiating with hope that this 2025 is going to be the year of the Jubilee. It's the year of Jubilee for Cameroonians, because it is possible for us to liberate ourselves from the situation in which we are, which is very bad. It seems hopeless, but the hope resides really in the fact that we can make things work for us. The destiny is for us to take and shape it.
Whatever the case, there is hope. Now, before we talk about how to move the country from where it is today to a better situation, to a better nation, a prosperous and a peaceful Cameroon, it is important for us to x-ray what brought us to where we are today. And I want to get your perspective on how we got to where we are today, the causes of all the multiple challenges affecting the nation and her people, the increasing poverty, misery, hardship, chronic underdevelopment, all roads across the country, almost all roads across the country in a very bad state, socioeconomic, security challenges affecting the nation from north to south, east to west. How did we get here? What brought us to where we are today? Let me get your perspective on this.
There is a simple answer to your question, Mr. Babila. It's a sad situation, but there is a simple answer to your question. That answer is electoral fraud, and that answer is one-party system. It started right from the time when the French knew that they had to leave Cameroon, because Cameroon was not a colony. Cameroon was a UN trust territory. Even French Cameroons and British Cameroons were all trust territories, and it was clear from the very beginning that these countries were destined to become independent members of the United Nations. So in the 1950s, when it became clear that France was going to leave, France began to plot how it could give us sham independence and maintain control of our political situation. So it began in 1960 when President Madu Ahidjo came to power without an election. And prior to that, somebody like Ruben Umniobe was killed in 1958. That's the person who would have led Cameroon to independence and to reunification. In 1960, Felix Mumie was killed in Switzerland by the French. And then 1960 again, you have Amadou Ahidjo becoming the first president of Cameroon without an election. And he was in power for 5 years. He brought in a constitution without the will of the people. And 1965, electoral fraud, one-party system. 1970, one-party system. 1972, the federal system, which brought some hope to the people of Cameroon, was torn apart. If you look at the referendum in 1972, you will understand that that culture of rigging election was already in force. There are places in former Southern Cameroons where people did not even have a ballot to oppose the idea of moving from a federal system of government to a unitary system of government. And the results of that election, showing 99.9 something percent, is a clear demonstration that the will of the people of Cameroon have never been taken into consideration in shaping the path that the country has taken. And in 1979, Ahidjo, with the help of Jacques Foccart, who was in charge of France Afrique, changed the constitution in order to remove an election and allow the president who is in power to transfer power to the next president without an election. That happened in 1982. And that very president, Amadou Ahidjo, who transferred power to Mr. Paul Biya, began regretting immediately. And then from there, you have 1992, when multi-party politics came to Cameroon, but we ended up with an election where history books now need to rewrite the history of Cameroon to indicate that in 1992, the person who won the election never became the president of Cameroon. That is the cause. When you have politicians in charge of government who are not answerable to the people, who are not afraid of losing election, then you end up with a system where even the president himself, if he has good intentions to govern the country, the fact that his party is not afraid of losing election, they cook up the results at all times, that means that his party can never really collaborate with the president and do what he wants. So these are the sources of our problems. From 1960 to 1992, one-party system election with just one candidate, and the results are already fixed. From 1992 up to this moment, electoral fraud and a sham system of multi-party politics, where the government continues to run as if it's a one-party politics. If you go to Africa, you see that Anglophone countries are competitive, Francophone countries are still locked in this continual process of rigging elections or denying people to participate in elections, apart from a country like Senegal. That's why we are here. We're here because of electoral fraud. We're here because we deny competition and we cling to a one-party system. Some Anglophone countries tested this idea of one-party system in Kenya and in Ghana, but today they are solidly in the lane of multi-party politics, because it is that competition, is that clashing of politicians who are ambitious to govern the country. That is where good ideas are born. That is where the government is very effectively controlled.
Now, is the problem of, or is the fact that the will of the people is not respected in elections the root cause of this problem of bad governance, corruption, embezzlement, mismanagement of public funds?
That's correct. Because once the will of the people is not respected, and you are not afraid of losing election, because you already know the results of the election, you know the candidate who is going to be the president for 42 years, and we're still talking about possible candidacy of that 92-year-old person. When you have that predictability and impunity injected into the system, you should not be surprised that even the gatekeeper of the government office is corrupt. Everybody becomes corrupt because there is no system of accountability. That's what is responsible for the plight of Cameroon, and our roots are very bad. Air is falling apart. Our government schools have become very...
All right, we are going to look at what can be done. What can be done to change the situation? What can be done to reverse the trend? And before that, we're going to the news stands now, and we're looking at what the newspapers reported this week, the press review. We begin the press review with Cameroon insider CEMAC Extraordinary Summit. Paul Biya and peers seek to anticipate challenges. Talking about the meeting of Central African heads of state, the extraordinary conference that took place in the nation's political capital, Yaoundé, and the desire of the African leaders to anticipate the challenges affecting the sub-region, notably socio-economic and even financial challenges affecting the Central African sub-region. Now, the Guardian Post says leaders agree on new resilience and growth path. That is what came out of the extraordinary summit of Central African heads of state. We're talking about the efforts being made to boost CEMAC sub-regions, the CEMAC sub-regions economy. And that was municipal updates rather. And now on the front page of the Guardian Post, far north, the region where you have the Boko Haram insurgency that's been raging with sporadic incursions in different parts of the region. Now the Guardian Post reports that the Disarmament, Demobilization and Reintegration Centers reintegrated 708 ex-Boko Haram associates in that part of the country. Now another issue of the Guardian Post. In an interview granted to the paper, the Treasury Director General clarifies public opinion on the 2023 settlement bill and situates audit bench's reservation on accounts. He also reiterates records meet standards, and the Director General of the Treasury, Mo Sylvester Tangongo, also assures stakeholders of accuracy and fairness of accounts. Now, Newswatch, Port of Douala Bonaberi nationalized container terminal making great strides. 5 years on, according to Newswatch, the container terminal is producing 2 billion francs yearly as opposed to 4.5 billion francs under the foreign company. The container terminal is now producing 20 billion francs every year, and the operational efficiency has dramatically been improved, and of course the duration for the truck service times reduced from about 7 days, reduced to 15 minutes, from about 7 hours to 15 minutes. Now another issue of the Guardian Post highlights some Anglophone outstanding mayors in different parts of the country, highlighting what they have been doing so far. And we have 3 women on that list of outstanding mayors projected by the Guardian Post newspaper. We're talking about Uta Margaret Ndiba, who is the mayor of Ekondo Titi, Magdalene Pondi, mayor of Isangeli, and of course Mbwai Eposi Florence, mayor of Limbewan subdivision. Now on another issue of municipal update, Maiden Southwest Cultural Festival, Libialen Elite hail funds for showcasing division's cultural heritage. Talking about the the Maiden Cultural Festival of the people of the Southwest region of the country, and the Liberian people hailing their funds for showcasing the division's cultural heritage during that event. Another issue of the municipal updates newspaper, for contribution to football development, CAF confers outstanding achievement award on the President Paul Biya, who received an award for outstanding achievements in the domain of sports during the last CAF Awards ceremony in Marrakesh, Morocco. And we wrap up, of course, with the Guardian Post indicating that CEMAC leaders have called for an end to reckless borrowing and spending. This is another fallout, another side of the extraordinary summit of the heads of state of the Central African Economic and Monetary Community, CEMAC, which took place in Yaoundé, and the leaders also appealed to international partners for support to finance structural adjustment of economies to withstand global shocks and improve living conditions of citizens. And that's it for this press review. You're welcome back. We are still with our guest, Ben Aki, Dr. Ben Aki, joining us from Syracuse in New York, United States of America. Doctor, how can we move the compass from misery, poverty, hardship, increasing cost of living, increasing tax burden on the population, the shrinking of political and civil space in the country, human rights violations, security challenges from north to south, east to west, in the northwest and southwest regions with the security tensions there prevailing for over 8 years now. We have the security problems in the far north region of the country, but also in the east region of the country, and just all over the place, security challenges. How can we move the compass from all these issues to a peaceful and prosperous nation?
So if we have identified the main problem of our country as being related to electoral fraud and being related to the creation of a quasi one-party system, I think that is where the solution is going to begin. We have to start by understanding that fact, that once you diagnose the problem, you're closer to finding a solution. Yes, you have just mentioned taxation. The citizens are taxed more. If you say you're not paying tax, anything you buy, there is a tax on it. Every activity carried out by the citizens is taxed heavily. But this money is misused. Look at the state of our primary schools. Look at the state of our government secondary schools, our government high schools. The quality is not what it used to be 20 years ago. For your child now to have a good education, that child has to go to a private school. And the private schools, because of the very high demand, they too are beginning to render subpar services to the people. And the culture that the president has brought to Cameroon is going to all parts of society, whether it's the church, whether it's a civil society organization, whether it's a cultural association. You see instances of corruption, you see instances of people trying to rig the elections of their leaders. We have to stop. At one point, we have to stop. We have to realize that it has not worked. And therefore, we have to start from that diagnosis that if we got to where we are today, because France, together with some people, decided to take away from the people of Cameroon the right to choose their leaders. If we got to where we are today, because some people decided to say we will choose which part of the country can allow their own son or their own daughter to become president, we must realize that it has not worked. We have heard people say an Anglophone will never be a president. A Bamileke will never be president. So and so will never be president. This is because the culture has taken root. We need to uproot it, and we need to start fighting. And the ways we start fighting is to give a very clear signal that voter registration is very important. We cannot resign, and that's why I was saying that if we have hope, we have action. Hope entails action. Hope entails that we get up and do something. And the first thing that we need to do right now is to make sure that we have as many Cameroonians registered to vote as possible. We have potentially about 12 to 13 million Cameroonians who can vote, but so far only 8 million are registered to vote. We need to continue to increase that number and to communicate very clearly to the government that the people of Cameroon will come out this time around. 2025 is the year of our jubilee, is the year of our liberation, is the year when the people of Cameroon will actually choose the leaders that they want to govern them. Leaders who will not be fighting for corruption, but leaders who will be fighting for the people. So it starts from there that we are entering 2025. There is not much that can be done in this presidency of Mr. Paul Biya. Take, for example, the conflict in former Southern Cameroons. We know that the solution is federalism, but I'm not going to hold my breath that this 92-year-old Paul Biya, who was Secretary General of the presidency at the time when the federal system was taken away from the people, I don't have any hope that he can bring this federal system before he leaves office. So we forget about Mr. Biya and ask the question, what kind of Cameroon do we want after Paul Biya? What kind of Cameroon after Paul Biya? And that's what I struggle to communicate in my book, Cameroon After Paul Biya. So the first thing is to take elections seriously and take all measures to make sure that the outcome of that election is the will of the people. Now, there is another thing related to that. In Cameroon, when they see that the people are going to make the choice, they can begin to restrict the choices that the people are going to make. That's a practice in all Francophone countries. I am from former Southern Cameroon, and I am fighting to say that we can stay together because this country, Cameroon, is my country, it's your country, it's our country. We have to fight for it. But the way we stay together is to say enough is enough to electoral fraud, enough is enough to the electoral system trying to stop competitive politicians who can offer credible options to the people, and you find ways to block them. That is what happens in France-Afrique. Cameroon is not France-Afrique. If former Southern Cameroon is going to remain part of this country, we must once and for all tell the people of France, tell the people of Francophone Africa, that Cameroon is not part of that rotten system. That system where fraud is the order of the day. That system where politicians who are competitive are locked up, are stopped from competing. We must be different. And that is where the hope is, that we can use the ballot box and chart our destiny towards a brighter and a better Cameroon tomorrow.
Now, while waiting for the ballot box, what can those who are in power now begin to do to provoke some necessary change, to provoke some change in the current situation of the country? You said that not much can be done by the Biya regime, but at least something can be done. And they have been saying that they are not there to maintain Cameroon in the current situation, but they are working to take Cameroon out of the situation, to improve the living conditions of the people. Now, if we consider that, our ministers, the leaders of this country, are not all people of that faith, and not all people who want to keep the country in the current difficult situation, what can they do at this point while waiting for the ballot box to begin to bring about some change in the living conditions of the people?
Well, the people who are in power now, they can only do the right thing when there is pressure. Pressure has to come from the opposition parties. Pressure has to come from the civil society organization, like I'm doing now. Pressure has to come from the journalists to tell them to do what the law says. That's the problem with this government. It does not do what the law says. It breaks the law, breaks the Constitution. How about, let us start with Article 66 of the Constitution, which requires that everybody who is elected, who is appointed to a high office in government, should declare their assets when they start the job and declare their assets when they leave the job, so that we can compare. Have they gotten rich while they were in the office? How did they get rich? That's something this government can do. If government, they are pretending that they want to make this country better for Cameroonians, that's just empty political campaign. Can we see the asset of Mr. Paul Biya next week? Can he declare that? Can the Prime Minister, can all the ministers declare their assets so that we see how much they own? So that by the time that they are leaving office, maybe in 10 months from now, we know that this is what they had in December, and this is what they now have in October. That's where we can start. I will not take any person from the CPDM who's in the government seriously if they cannot fulfill Article 66 of the Constitution. Stop breaking our laws. Stop disrespecting our Constitution. Respect that Constitution and set an example. So that's one thing that they can do. Now, we have to make a distinction between doing something because that's the right thing to do, and doing something because you are pretending to be campaigning for the next election. They had 7 years. They couldn't do anything significant to change the trajectory of the country. Cameroon is going backward. If you look at the economists who are analyzing the situation of Cameroon, we are going backward. This last 7 years, that's what has happened. So I don't think that these people can, within 1 year, do something miraculous to change the situation. But let us take for example, let us take seriously the fact that we are fighting this government, which is not listening to the people because they can win election without the will of the people. But we are also fighting foreign government. There are countries that are betting on the fact that this government will stay in power. There are countries like China, the countries like Israel, like France. All of these countries, we will begin to see they're giving more resources to the government. The government is borrowing more money, and that money is used as campaign donation from the CPDM. It's campaign funding from the CPDM. So we have to pay attention to the money that is borrowed between now and the election. The opposition, I'm calling on the opposition, I'm calling on Mr. Campto, Honorable Cabral Libby, and all the opposition, Mr. Akeremona, Barrister Akeremona. I'm calling on this politician to open your eyes and see how the government is borrowing money in the name of Cameroon and using that money as campaign money for the CPDM. We need to make sure that that habit stops. If we can do that, that will begin to shape, that will begin to change the way we use our resources, because we are borrowing money and handicapping our children, while at the same time misusing the money and not making development. So between now and then, between now and election, we have to try to communicate to the CPDM that things are going to be different. The people will know which candidate is strong. The people will know which candidate is likely to win the election, even before the election. And on the election day, all results from polling stations will be known by the people of Cameroon. They have to trust that the Cameroonian people are going to make that possible.
All right,
because
we are going to. All right, we're going to talk more about the change that can possibly come through the ballot box in 2025. In a short while, we're going to take interviews of the week, and in the place of interviews of the week, we talk to an educationist, Dr. Nick Nguyen, on the issue of holiday classes, extracurricular activities that are organized by schools out of the study periods stated by the law, organizing the functioning of schools in Cameroon. And recently, the regional delegate of secondary education for the Littoral said no to holiday classes. Children are supposed to rest during holidays. And we talked to Dr. Nick about this. This is what he says. Take this.
When you look at the school program, there is time for school and then time for holidays. And I think this time for holidays is important and is practiced all over the world. And it's important that children rest so that when they go back to school, they have the energy with which to start off again. But you cannot keep on pushing children and pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing. That's not the right thing to do. We are not saying that students should not work, students and pupils should not work during the holidays. They should work. But the type of work and exercises should change. And that's what matters most. You know, they go to school and they're studying from this curriculum, studying geography, history, English, French, maths, I don't know what. And then when they come for holiday classes, you still put them through that, trying to make them robots and recording machines. It doesn't work. And like I've said before on several occasions, the present school system, which is based on the logical mathematical intelligence, is not the best. And that is what has been implanted all over the world over the years. But countries like Finland, South Korea, Singapore, China, and so on, they saw deficiencies in that and opened up the school system and changed the curriculum so that children are more engaged in what they do. Children are supposed to learn in a way that they develop their skills, they develop their minds, they are creative. But the way we train our own children in Cameroon, they don't even have laboratories. So they have to imagine chemistry, imagine physics, imagine biology, they imagine just about everything. There is no way you learn only through imagination. You have to see practical things, and it should be hands-on. You have to touch, feel, and smell. We only use our sights. It's not proper. And therefore, children end up memorizing, and then difficult concepts in physics, chemistry that they have never seen, felt, and touched. You try to get them to imagine it or to recite it. It doesn't work. It doesn't work at all. So that is the thing. So what am I saying? I'm saying, number one, that the curriculum that we use for training in our schools and the type of education, number one, that foundation is wrong. And then not all students will be excited to be doing that kind of thing all year round. We need to put in something that stimulates the children to learn even more and better and become creative, so that they can use their hands, use their imagination, and so on. For now, in the school system, as we see it, we just kind of line these children up on, put them in benches, and the teacher keeps spoon-feeding them from morning to evening, 24 hours on 24 hours, 12 months on 12 months. That's not correct. That's not the way it's done. If you were to ask all these teachers and schools that are so enthusiastic with these holiday classes to organize them free of charge, they will stop. That's the first thing. That's where we begin. Number two, we never ask the right questions. No, the pretext is that we are organizing these classes for slow learners. Fair and good, fine, you're trying to help the slow learners. Did you ask the right question? Why are they slow? Why didn't they learn the stuff they were supposed to learn during the school period? It is the same system used in the UK and France and America and so on. And yet, they have laboratories. They have laboratories, and then they train the children to be creative, in the physics, in the mathematics, in the biology, and all these things. They expose the children to technology. But when the French came here, they hid the technology from us. They gave us, you put the whole school to be writing a composition in French, and the one that has the best mark in French is given a score, and we hail him as being the most intelligent. You see how they deceived us? We are writing compositions. Life is not about compositions. We have spent 60 years writing compositions. And those people, they did this intentionally so that you should not be aware of your minerals, so that you cannot transform those minerals, so that you cannot build those machines, so that you don't have the capacity to build your roots, so that you cannot do anything and you just depend only on the white man. So you see how they deceived us? It's a deceit.
That was Dr. Nick Nguyam, educationist, speaking there about the educational system of the Republic of Cameroon. And we're still with Dr. Benjamin Aki, joining us from Syracuse, New York, United States of America. Now we want to talk about change through the ballot box. And English Cameroon for United Cameroon carried out a presidential election poll this December 2024. And according to your findings, Maurice Kamto is leading, followed by Cabral Libi, Maurice Kamto of the Cameroon Renaissance Movement political party, Cabral Libi of the Cameroon Party for National Reconciliation, followed by President Paul Biya, current head of state, and the natural candidate of the CPDM, Cameroon People's Democratic Movement. And then we have Akere Muna with the movement now, and Christopher Fomunyo, an independent candidate from your findings. Tell us more about this.
Yeah, thank you for your interest in this opinion poll, Mr. Babila. As you know, English Cameroon for United Cameroon is committed to the fact that we, the people of former Southern Cameroon, need to feel at home in Cameroon and take Cameroon as our home. So we started polls about 4 years ago, 2020, and we're continuing. We want to know how the political scene is evolving, and that's why we conduct these polls. For this year, we've been conducting every 3 months. So we had one in March, one in June, one in September, and then we had another one now. For the first three candidates, for the first three persons you have indicated there, this is not really different from what we found before. If you want to put this in context, the 2018 election was disputed at the Constitutional Council. Elecam did not prove to the Constitutional Council and the people of Cameroon that the 71% they get to Mr. Paul Biya, that these results were based on the analytic counting of the results from all the polling stations in the country. They couldn't show this proof. So as you can see, opinion polls before the election were showing that Mr. Maurice Kamto and Mr. Paul Biya were almost the same level, around 30-something%. So they were very competitive, very close by, so that either one of them could have won that election. So if you take that result and try to understand the results which our platform has obtained, you will see that since 2018 and 2024, where we are today, Mr. Maurice Kamto has proven to the people that he is a real opposition leader who is pushing the government to do the right thing for the people of Cameroon. So he is really the leader of the opposition. He has strengthened his position from what his position was in 2018. And if we take his position in 2018 to be what opinion polls showed just before the election, that he was around 35-37%, then you will see that he has strengthened that position to where the polls are now showing that he is in the 50%. In this particular poll, 55.49%, 55.74%. So you see that Mr. Kamto has improved his standing since 2018. But if you look at the other person he's competing with, Mr. Paul Biya, there are many people we find in the poll who are CPDM militants, but they tend to vote for opposition candidates for president. That means there are CPDM candidates who think that at this time, Mr. Paul Biya should not be a candidate at the upcoming election. So Mr. Paul Biya's position has significantly weakened, and in public appearances, he shows signs that it is time for him to retire. And then Mr. Cabral Libby has strengthened his position a little bit. So in the logic of looking at the political situation and comparing it to where that political situation was 7 years ago or 6 years ago, it makes
at the 6th position or so, and then Abaka Ahmad Abubakar, who is a former governor, Abubakar Usman, May, civil society leader. And then tell us about the ranking of CPDM candidates. According to your ranking, you have Joseph Janguti, that is the Prime Minister, at the leadership position, Marafa Hamidou Yaya, Alamin Usman May, Philemon Yang, Manauda Malachi, Minister of Public Health, Frank Biya, son of the President of the Republic, Louis Paul Mutazin, Celestine Kecha Kutes, Ferdinand Ngongo, Oswald Baboke, and of course Paul Elungchen, Rene Sadi, and others. How did you come about this ranking?
So as you can see, the names you have just listed. So I think what I was explaining before was the hypothetical question: if Mr. Biya is the candidate of the CPDM, how would you vote? And we established that ranking. Of course, you have also discussed the other ranking just of opposition candidates to see how they stand with respect to one another. But what you are asking me is the ranking of CPDM candidates. So first of all, we selected 20 militants of the CPDM who are suggested by people and who are also seen by us from analysis of the news, from analysis of the way the government functions. We select them from different regions and put them together to say, okay, these are the potential militants of the CPDM who could become the leaders of the party. So there were 20 of them, and you see that consistently over 4 years, the rankings have generally suggested that the top 5 candidates are the current Prime Minister, and Marafa Hamidou Yaya, who is the CPDM but is in prison, and then the former Minister of Finance, who is now Minister of, I think, Industrial Development or something, that sort, Alamin Usman May, and then Philemon Yang. Sometimes they switch. Sometimes Philemon Yang is in third position and Alamin Usman May is in fourth. But this time around, Alamin Usman May is in third position and the former Prime Minister, Philemon Yang, is in fourth position. And the fifth position right at this time is the Minister of Public Health, Mr. Malachi Manaoda, but sometimes it switches between him and Mr. Frank Bia. But Mr. Frank Bia this time ended up being in the sixth position. So, but if you're talking in terms of the strength of this candidate, these first four candidates, the Prime Minister, the former Prime Minister, Marafa Amidou Yaya, and Alamin Usman May, they are sufficiently strong. But if you're looking at their scores, they're a little bit low. But this tells you that there are many militants of the CPDM who are competitive or who are at least getting some support to be the leaders of the CPDM. So that tells you that if the CPDM does not choose their presidential candidate very fast and begin to unite the party, they are going to end up in a situation where whoever they choose, many other people will be disappointed and they will decide not to contribute towards making CPDM successful. So that question is really to say, we know that the force of nature and just the demands of the presidency dictate that Mr. Paul Biya should not be the candidate of the CPDM in October 2025. In this case, the CPDM has many people at their level, talented people. They have to come to the people of Cameroon and say they are different. They accept the good things that Mr. Biya did, but they have their own plan to fix the country, and these are the reforms they want to bring. For example, they should come out and say that they are willing to a system of government to resolve many of the conflicts that the country is facing. They should show that they are willing to declare their assets on the day that they are elected, so that people will know that they are not stealing money and they are not giving a bad example to their own workers. They should show that they are not going to oppress the opposition. So they need to mount a campaign which respects the people of Cameroon, because sovereignty belongs to us, the people, and we exercise it through election. If the CPDM respects the voters, they should do so.
So according to you, the most competitive candidate of the CPDM for the forthcoming presidential election is the Prime Minister, Chief Dr. Joseph Jangute, and that goes with the idea of an Anglophone president, which has been in public opinion in recent times, with many persons saying that it is time for an Anglophone to take over the leadership of this nation. What's your take on that?
Yeah, so you're touching on the issue of an Anglophone president, right?
Yes.
Yes, so as it stands,
will that Anglophone president come from the CPDM? And if he has to come from the CPDM, is the current Prime Minister, Joseph Jangute, the most competitive, the best, that can take up that position and bring about the change that we need? Because the whole issue is about bringing about change that will have a trickle-down effect on the lives of Cameroonians.
Yes, it's an interesting realization. In terms of probability, if it came down to an Anglophone president, those who are interested in an Anglophone president as an objective, they are more likely to see an Anglophone president from the side of the CPDM, just based on the way the competition is going on from the polls that are reported. So yes, you have Mr. Joseph Jangute, and you also have the former Prime Minister, Mr. Philemon Yang. The two of them could make good presidential candidates if the CPDM is willing to present themselves as a party that cares about regional balance and the history of the country. And indeed, the people of former Southern Cameroon have contributed very much to the CPDM staying in power for long. Whether that is good or bad for the country, it's a different question. But the people of former Southern Cameroon have contributed to the longevity of the CPDM in power. And I think it is proper at this particular time for them to recognize that their best chance of winning the election is with an Anglophone candidate. But now, Mr. Babila, you know that I am a federalist activist, first and foremost. I believe that this country can be held together and developed and made prosperous if we go back to a federal system of government. For me personally, if the CPDM puts forward an Anglophone candidate like Mr. Diongote, but if the CPDM does not embrace federalism, I don't see why the people of former Southern Cameroon should be celebrating, because he will be coming with an agenda which is still subjugation of the people through a unitary system of government. If a francophone opposition candidate is willing to give them federalism, I would advise my people from former Southern Cameroon to take a very close look at what the opposition is offering, even if that opposition candidate is not an Anglophone or is not a person of former Southern Cameroon, as some people try to.
And that's why, Benaki, many Cameroonians today think that it shouldn't be an issue of another candidate other than President Paul Biya from the CPDM taking over the leadership of the country, but a complete change with nothing of the past and the present maintained, a complete change. And now there's the idea that the opposition need to come together and bring out a single candidate who can challenge the present regime and take over and bring about this complete change that many Cameroonians are yearning for today.
Well, I will caution Cameroonians who say phrases like complete change. I stand for federalism. I stand for constitutional democracy. And what does constitutional democracy say? It says reforms go from law to law. We have a constitution. That constitution tells us how we change the laws of our country. And the system of government, the bureaucracy, the laws we have, the problem we really have with this regime is not that all our laws are bad. It's that the good laws are not implemented. So if you have somebody in government who even starts by implementing the good laws we have, you begin to see a lot of improvement. Those who are calling for a complete change, a radical change, I will tell them from the perspective of somebody from former Southern Cameroon, you are singing the song of France and they like radical revolutions. Those radical revolutions never produce stable society. A stable society is the one that undergoes change from law to law, and that means in the case of Cameroon, you need, first of all, to allow a competitive election to take place, and you need the people to promise what reforms they are going to bring about. And in my book, Cameroon After Paul Biya, I argue that if we do not want wars and instability in Cameroon, if we want political stability, we have to stick to the principles of constitutional democracy. That means we encourage the opposition candidate, the leading opposition candidate, to present the reforms that they want to bring about when they are elected. We ask the CPDM to tell us what they're going to do differently, because what they have done so far has not worked. And then the people of Cameroon, they go out and choose. And then in 2026, they vote the parliament, and this parliament comes together, writes a new federal constitution, begins to change the way we govern ourselves. Power will go down to the people, and within 7-10 years, you will see a completely transformed Cameroon without undergoing a radical revolution which can disrupt your schools, close down your schools, exam centers will no longer be taken. That's what people are saying when they say a complete change. If you say a complete change, you want to say what the French people say, sagat, sagat. That's not the way people from the culture of former Southern Cameroons will think. We think in terms of no matter how bad the situation is, we need to go from law to law with clear articulation of the reforms that we want to make. And the strongest reform that stands in front of us is writing a federal constitution and then making sure that the laws that are in the book are respected. Making sure that people who are elected declare their assets and stop this corruption which goes on with impunity. Making sure that these people don't arrest people without following the law. So we have some very good laws in the book. If you just start by respecting them, that is the change that will change the lives of people.
Dr. Ben Aki, civil society leader, leader of English Cameroon for a united Cameroon, and author of the book Cameroon After Paul Biya, joining us from New York, United States of America. Thank you so much, Doctor, for the insights you've shared with us in this edition of The Inside.
Thank you very much, Mr. Babila, and thank to your viewers for this opportunity to share with you my thoughts on this topic.
Thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for staying with us. If you missed the program, you can follow us on our social media handles on Facebook and YouTube. You can also follow the rebroadcast of the program on Friday at 5 p.m. Thank you so much for your kind attention. Do stay with us on Equinoxe Television. Goodbye.